My husband may have cheated on me with my dead best friend and had an affair baby. Original post, August 13th, 2024. I don't even know where to start. The past 6 months have been an absolute clusterfuck, and it only seems to be getting worse. My best friend since elementary school, who I'll call Alice, passed away in February from cancer. She had a 2-year-old daughter who went into the custody of her mom after she passed away, who I'll call Alexis. Last month, Alexis showed up on our doorstep unannounced, telling my husband he needs to take responsibility for his child and either take custody or start finally paying child support. She says that Alice had told her when her daughter was born who the father was, but didn't want anything to do with him. To answer the inevitable, Alice was a traveling nurse and made a lot of money, which is the only reason I can think of for why she didn't go for child support. During this conversation, my husband had the worst panic attack he's ever had, so we had to end the conversation before I could get more details. My husband's story is, I don't even know. He said that Alice's daughter is probably his, but that it isn't what I think. Almost 3 years ago, we threw a large housewarming party as we just moved into our dream home after I finally finished residency and was set to make real money for once. Alice was in town and set to be at the party, but I was called into work before she got there. I didn't get back till after 3 a.m. Party was winding down, my husband was passed out upstairs, and Alice had already left the party, which at the time I did find strange as we hadn't seen each other in months. My husband claims he woke up in the middle of the night to Alice on top of him, but he passed out again before he could say anything. He claims he never told me because he was worried I wouldn't believe him, which I don't know if I do. He showed me some texts he sent his best friend the next day, asking for his advice about him thinking someone raped him. But if he cheated, he could have had that conversation as evidence, especially since he never said Alice specifically. Ever since the party, he has been very distant with Alice, and after she had her daughter, he would even find excuses not to be around the house when she would visit at all. I don't know if that's because he cheated or if Alice did actually rape him and this was his trauma response. Honestly, Reddit, I don't know what to do. I've known Alice since we were children, and she had never come across as that kind of person. But I've also known my husband for over a decade, and he's not once ever given the inclination of a cheater. He's an attractive guy, and I've seen the looks he gets at the gym, and he's never even given more than a glance. What the hell should I do? How do I figure out what the truth is here when Alice isn't even around to defend herself? She never even implied she liked my husband, let alone want to sleep with him. I told my husband he needs to get a DNA test before anything is decided on the child's part. But in the meantime, he needs to move out while I think about what I'm going to do here. Relevant comments. Commenter. Did Alice change behavior after that night? Anything at all? OP. Not that I noticed. She'd always been at least a little standoffish towards him as she thought I could do better. The first time she visited after she gave birth, she asked where he was since he wasn't home, for the first time. But she never asked again after that. Commenter. Obviously, DNA test. His story does sound wild, but he wouldn't be the first. Is he someone who tends to drink a lot, at times, blackout? OP. Not at all. He rarely drinks, and generally only at parties which at our ages are few and far between. He works a tough and stressful job, so I figured once he was buzzed, he laid down and fell asleep. Not that he had drank more than normal or anything like that. Commenter. Why does he need to move out? Your friend raped him, and he even texted his friend the next day. It's possible he didn't even realize it was your friend. You also only have her mom saying it's his child. Your horrible friend did this. You should be supporting your husband. OP. I needed space to think. It's only temporary for a few days at most. I've been trying to think on this for the past 2 weeks, but it's impossible to do when he's here, as all I can see when I look at him is my best friend. Dealing with her death the first time was hard enough, adding in the new feelings of betrayal if it was an affair, or betrayal and disgust if it was rape, are making it even harder. How am I supposed to work through that and also figure out if I believe my husband when those emotions are clouding my judgment? Commenter: honestly, I'd be inclined to believe your husband. Sending the texts preemptively to cover his cheating seems like a stretch, and it makes more sense that they are genuine. I feel like faking everything else just implies an excessive level of manipulation, and it sounds like you don't have a reason to believe he'd do that. Also, him not telling you because he thought you wouldn't believe him sounds like it might not be an entirely incorrect judgment at this point. OP: I'm starting to feel that way too, and I think I might be a terrible wife. Commenter: women go decades without admitting when they are raped because of fear of people not believing them. I'm going to be honest, men will go twice as long and preferably take it to the grave because almost always and automatically told it's not even possible for a man to be raped. I know you have to go on instinct, but his story makes sense with the texts he sent his friend. He also would hope to never be around the woman he is sure raped him again, which is why he made himself scarce after the fact. If he's a smart man like you claim, he would not have wanted you alone with Alice basically ever because she could reveal an affair. He would have tried to separate your bond. Instead, he hid because she couldn't really say she raped him. You say she wasn't a fan of his at all. She thought you could do better. So, why wouldn't she spin it as he came onto to her? It's because she was the one in the wrong. OP, thank you. I don't know what it is about this part, but it just clicks with me. You're absolutely right. With her level of disdain, if it was an affair, she certainly would have told me if only to separate us, especially on her deathbed. I was in the room with her, holding one of her hands. She obviously took this to her grave, and the only reason she would is if she raped him. Update on the same post. After talking with you, I've come to the realization that my husband is being truthful. My best friend raped him. Several people pointed out that with Alice not liking my husband, if it was an affair, she would have told me when she was dying, if only to separate us. You're absolutely right. I was there, in the room, while she passed. I held her hands for days. We talked about so much. If it was just an affair, she would have told me. But if she raped my husband, she wouldn't have said a word. That's the type of thing horrible people take to the grave. I've also come to the realization that I made a terrible mistake asking my husband to leave for a few days while I gather my thoughts. Not to make excuses, but losing my best friend to cancer, a long cancer fight at that, was brutal. To say that I was devastated wouldn't do it justice. That it happened only 6 months ago, I'm still feeling it every day. So, to have this thrown on me, it's like I'm losing her all over again. Either she betrayed me and fucked my husband, or she betrayed me and raped my husband. Not only have I lost her, but now I've lost the good memories, an entire lifetime's worth. It was impossible for me to look at him and not also see her, and be struck with the horror and realization of that loss all over again. I felt I needed to be able to break down, grieve, and think without the fresh wave of loss I got every time I saw him. It was wrong of me to ask him to leave. You're right, though, and as of a few minutes ago, I've righted this wrong. I called my husband, I apologized, told him I believe him and begged him to come home. He'll be here in half an hour at most, and I'm going to support my husband the way I know he would have supported me. I've been an off-and-on Reddit user for several years, and sometimes the advice given on subreddits like these can be a bit hit or miss. But today, you guys did good. You've helped me realize not only that I was wrong, and being stupid at that, but that I was hurting the person that needed me the most. I was selfish. I have no idea what we're going to do as far as the potential daughter is concerned, but I can assure you we'll deal with it together. It's going to take a lot of time, and probably a lot of therapy, to grieve this new loss. I feel numb now, as though I'll never cry again. My best friend raped my husband, which means she was no friend of mine. She flaunted it, coming to my house, sitting with me, and gabbing. She brought her child here, trying to rub it in his face, right in front of me. She tortured the man I loved, and I was an unknowing party to it. I feel sick to my stomach over how many times she came over just to hold it over him. I'm honestly at a loss on how to make that up to him. If you all have any ideas, please feel free to give them to me. I think I'll need all the help I can get. Tomorrow, I'm going to take a leave of absence from work, just until we can figure out our next steps and we can get our heads on straight. Thank you, everyone. Update, posted March 21st, 2025. I've received a lot of messages asking for an update, so I've decided to finally sit down and write one out. As you can imagine, after the clusterfuck that was thrust upon us, this update isn't likely to answer any of your questions, only present a few more. As mentioned in the original post, I did take a leave of absence from work and we spent a long time just being together, talking, reaffirming our love for one another, and figuring out what to do next. We of course spoke with a lawyer, and my husband was very adamant about not having anything to do with the child, but was willing to offer financial support as needed. So we agreed to do a DNA test immediately to prove paternity, and then go from there. Didn't know you could buy tests on Amazon, but with only a few weeks processing, it was the easiest path forward since Alexis lives hours away. To everyone's surprise, Alice's daughter is not my husband. We ended up testing twice, both very, very definitive. The first test we performed ourselves as mentioned, and another after Alexis refused to believe the first test and took my husband to court for child support. For a single second, this whole thing made me second-guess if my husband was raped, that this could have been her way of forcing my husband to admit to an affair. But after talking with Alexis, I don't think that was the plan. Alexis says that Alice told her my husband was the father under strict confidence, demanding that she never ever tell me or my husband. We were only ever to be told if Alexis died before Alice's daughter was old enough to take care of herself, so that she wouldn't end up in foster care. The only reason Alexis came to us then, instead of keeping that secret, is because Alice's life insurance wasn't being released yet, and she was out of options. She also felt I should know my husband, and her daughter had had an affair. This all reaffirms in my mind that Alice did rape my husband, with the expectation of getting pregnant with his child. She obviously had other partners at the time since one of them fathered her daughter, but no one knows who. It's clear to me that Alice believed it was my husband. I did suggest Alexis upload a sample to Ancestry, see if any matches pop up, but as Alice traveled all over for work, I don't know that anything will ever come of that. In truth, I've washed my hands of the situation. Alice did enough damage, and I don't particularly plan to be around for any more. My husband and I have gone through a lot of counseling, and will likely continue for a while. This whole situation damaged us both, my husband more obviously, and I don't think we'll fully heal for a very long while. To answer a few questions. No, sadly there isn't a hidden diary or texts to explain what the fuck was going on. My husband and I are not getting divorced. He understands why I reacted the way I did, and has been strong when I was weak before. I've spent the past 7 months being strong while he was weak, so we're considering the whole thing even. We are still madly in love, and plan to be together for a long time. Still. More on this. No, we will not be adopting Alice's child. If she had been my husband's, we would not have been adopting the child. Ultimately, I thank Reddit for setting me straight. There was a massive outpouring of support and corrective advice. To say that you may have saved my marriage is an understatement. I do, however, have some good news. During my leave of absence, while my husband and I rediscovered what makes us love each other the most, I got pregnant. We're expecting our first baby, a girl, in a little over 3 months, and my husband and I are ecstatic. And no, we will not be naming her after my dead ex-best friend.